there. Welcome to the second episode of Meet the Curator. This series is brought to you by the Real Scientists Nano team. Our goal is to provide a platform where scientists can communicate their work and interact with the public. With that in mind, every week we introduce you to a scientist working in the field of materials and nanoscience, who would be curating the RealSci_Nano Twitter account. Stay tuned to know about this week's curator. Good afternoon, Drew. Today we have with us Drew Evans, who is an Associate Research Professor at the University of South Australia. Drew, how did you end up in your current research field?
Yeah, that's a very good question. The way I ended up in my research field was, I would have to say, is not by design, but by just taking opportunities as they came up. So my background, my life story, I grew up on the east coast of Australia, in the capital of Australia, Canberra. I went to the Australian National University, and I started out in a what's called a double degree, so science and engineering together. And my science I picked was, I guess, by process of elimination, in that I enjoyed physics, but wasn't that excited by it. I was good at maths, but not excited enough to do a degree in it. I had not done biology, and so by default, chemistry was the one that I picked. And through my degree, so in that particular degree, you do both degrees at the same time. But then in the third year, you stop all your engineering to finish off the science. And at that point, I was starting to get involved with physical chemistry and doing quite a lot in that, and got quite interested in it and got offered to do an honours year, which is in Australia is similar to a master's type year. And so I dropped out of my engineering to pursue finishing off my physical chemistry. And sort of at the back end of that, I enjoyed it all, and that was great, and decided that I was going to go and get a job, and found out I was either underqualified or overqualified for everything I applied for. And I had been told if I ever wanted to do a PhD that the research group where I did my honours would gladly have me back. So in order to keep my brain stimulated and functioning and to get some money in to pay the mortgage and the bills, I went back and did a PhD. So that was in physical chemistry. And during that time, though, I got to do a whole bunch of other stuff, a little bit of engagement with industry and projects. And that led to me deciding at the end of my PhD to get a job in industry. So I applied for a job as a physicist in industry. So I jumped from chemistry to physics. And through that, so that particular company was a company inventing a whole range of new digital printing technologies, so inkjet printer, laser printer. And I got involved then with running a pilot production factory, making large volumes of new ink and toner for the printing industry. So there I got involved with manufacturing, advanced manufacturing and engineering. Surprise, surprise, my 2 years of my engineering degree were coming back to haunt me. Well, not haunt, but. And so I got heavily involved with engineering. At the end of 4 years there, the company ended up closing. The owner sold all the IP. We lost our jobs, and I got a job in my current role at the University of South Australia as a materials engineer. So I haven't, at no point have I ever decided that this was my path. At no point have I set out to do this, but I've just taken opportunities as they came. In my role, I do chemistry, physics, maths, touch a little bit on biology. We do a lot of engineering, focused on manufacturing and getting our research out into industry. So that's a very long answer to your question about how I got into my current field, but I feel it's important to point out that not everybody has a well-planned, well-structured career pathway. I just go with the flow, and if things look good, I'll do them. So who knows what tomorrow will bring.
That's a very, very interesting path you have had, and you already pointed out. I think it's very important to point out that not everyone goes from, okay, bachelor, master, PhD, postdoc, research position. That's not how it works. And it, I guess, is also comforting for a lot of scientists or a lot of master or PhD students. If they don't know what they want to do, it's okay, it will work out. You just need to be patient, you just need to wait for the opportunity and jump on the opportunity as soon as it comes along.
Oh, absolutely. I would say my career has not been stress-free. I'm absolutely concerned about where my next job's going to be and all that kind of stuff, just like everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
But in hindsight, it's always worked out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you just have to look at the bigger picture at some point. Just take a step back and look at the bigger picture, and then it looks fine. It all works out.
Absolutely.
Okay, wonderful. And how and where does your research, your current research, fall in the domain of nano and material science?
So my current research area really falls at I guess, an overlap of material science and nanoscience.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, in our research group, we look at the performance and manufacturability of thin film materials.
Mm-hmm.
So here we're looking at everything from metals to metal alloys to metal oxides to polymers to organic electronic type materials.
Mm-hmm.
And what's central to that in terms of research is understanding the structure property relationships of how structuring on the nano and micro scale then relate to the properties and therefore performance of materials. I guess in terms of the material space, though, we spend just as much time on the manufacturing as we do the materials.
Mm-hmm.
And that's with a view to whatever we discover from a fundamental perspective, we're aiming to get that out of our lab and into the hands of manufacturing companies so they can make something.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Oh, that sounds very interesting, actually. That's super interesting, yeah?
There are some very exciting days.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You're basically interacting with researchers, with technology transfer officials or people and industry. So it's like you're dealing with everyone.
Yes, and that's what brings a lot of diversity to what we do, but also brings a lot of excitement because on any one day we can be looking at some very fundamental questions about how charge an electron transports along a polymer chain, through to how that manifests itself in actually just the performance in a device that needs to be used 10,000 times before it fails. And then thinking about how that manufacturing process scales up so that the partner can make 100,000 units per year to then sell at the right price to their customers. You know, that's I find it exciting because it's got everything, all the ingredients there.
Right. It's from the electron transfer to the production line. You're looking at it from the beginning till the end where the product is made. You're helping at every step of the way.
Yes.
Awesome. All right. I guess you have a lot of exciting research projects then, but which one is your favorite? And can you explain it in short? Your favorite and the research project that you're most proud of?
Yes. So the one that I can easily talk about, because there are a handful that maybe if we do a podcast in a few years, I can talk about when they become publicly available. But the main one, and it's a little bit old now, but we were previously working on a project with an automotive manufacturing company. So this is a tier one supplier to the global car manufacturing businesses, so to Ford and Toyota and so on. And on a fundamental level, we were developing nanocomposite metal alloys. So this is where we were depositing very thin alloy coatings that had particular crystal structures and combinations of crystal structures, so the way the atoms join together. And by tuning those structures, which we were controlling via the manufacturing process, we were able to generate a thin film, so only 40 nanometers thick, that had particular optical properties, corrosion resistant, abrasion resistant. It could handle temperature cycling and those kinds of tests. And that was the primary component as the reflective layer in the world's first plastic automotive mirror. So this is it's a plastic substrate that has a range of coatings on the front of it, where to date 3.5 million of these have been manufactured here in Adelaide by our industry partner SMR, and then exported to the US on the F-250 pickup truck for Ford. So in terms of a project that I can talk about, that I'm most proud of, here's where we've done some underlying fundamental science, understanding really how the atomic structure of these materials play out in their properties, but then been able to turn that into performance parameters, go through the scale up, and actually help our industry partner now commercialize the technology. So it's that had all the ingredients in it. That was pretty exciting.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. You must be really proud that something you worked on the lab is now being used in the real world. I mean, that's the whole point, sort of, right?
Yes. And so that's why, on a technical level, that was really good. But there we learn a lot of lessons about just the general way you can run the projects to maximize the chance of success. And so I spent a lot of time talking then with people about just the general process of how to get that science out into commercial products. Because at the end of the day, a lot of the nanotech and a lot of the material science we do is already geared at applications. So it's primed up, ready to get out of the lab. But it's not easy to do. As a lot of people know, it's not easy to do. So
it's not easy. The research is perfect, but then the product development part and bringing it to the production line into the industry, whew, that's a lot of work.
Yes.
Yeah.
A lot of work, a lot of time, and a lot of money.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you need a lot of patience and
Yes.
a lot of breathing in between, like, okay, it's gonna work, it's gonna work. Yeah, absolutely. In the sense of research, if you had three wishes, what would you like to change, or what would you ask for to enhance your research experience?
It's hard to narrow it down to three, to be honest. I would say, and in no particular order, the first one would actually be thinking about how we can relax the emphasis on metrics. So one of the challenges as a researcher, especially, well, a researcher in general, is how we're measured, how our performance is measured. So number of publications, citations, H-index, how much funding have we brought in? So that in itself is difficult. But then when you overlay that for a material scientist and a nanoscientist, we're already thinking about how to engage with industry and how to get it into a product. And it's not clear how some of the measures of success in that space even relate to our own career pathways. Likewise, does industry really care what our H-index is? To be honest, I'm not sure. So I wish, my first wish would be a way to relax the emphasis on metrics, because I think that would create, or at least give researchers more headspace to think about the science rather than their CV, which would be good. My second wish, and I'm a really strong believer in this, is a more inclusive, welcoming research sector. One of the things that I talk about a lot, we discuss a bit, and working on a lot of programs around it, is how do we address the bias in the research sector, and the fact that, well, the research sector is predominantly dominated by people that look like me, middle-aged white guys, and to be honest, that's for a sector that prides itself on diversity of thinking to solve some of the most complex problems we've got on the planet, you can't have a small one demographic trying to do all of that, because then you're not getting all the different ideas, different perspectives. That's a big one for me, is a more welcoming, inclusive environment. And that really requires a whole bunch of things to change. So I understand it's a big wish, because there's a lot that needs changing. But I wish it would change. But more generally, I do know of areas that are doing well at that. But overall, we've got a very, very long way to go. And if we don't take proactive action to make the change, it's going to be too long before we see the change. So then the third one, I think most people would agree, is more money. But the way I see it at the moment is around funding people. So I know here in Australia there's a lot of discussion about ensuring there's enough funding to fund all the great project ideas. But one of the big challenges we've got for early to mid-career researchers is just a lack of employment stability and continuity. It's hard to do groundbreaking science when you're thinking about where your next job's going to be. So if you really want to see the benefit come from research in terms of improvement of quality of life and value add to society and economic sort of growth, then you've got to give stability to the people that are actually going to do that. And unfortunately, it comes back to money. So if someone can invent a tree that grows money, and then we can just farm that and hand it out, that'd be great. So yeah.
You can start working on that research project. The money.
Yeah. See what I can do.
Yeah. No, those three are like completely understandable. The first and the third wish, I think they go hand in hand. The H index and the matrix and the money, that goes hand in hand. And I think the focus should be more on the second wish that you mentioned, the diversity and inclusion, which is very, very important. I agree completely. Yeah. And I understand the pain when you have to look for the money that is coming in, and you have to look for the next money that is coming in the current project. Instead of focusing on your current project, you already have to think, what am I going to do in the next 5 years? Because that's what the funding agency is asking me to provide. Yeah.
Yes.
And that's not how research works. Most of the times it's more like, oh, we try these 3 things, maybe one of them works, and then you go off in that direction, and then another 3 things, and then one of them works. So it should be more like a neuronal network sort of a diagram, rather than a one line of timeline. That would probably be more.
Research is not linear.
Yeah, that is correct. Research is not linear. No, absolutely. Yeah. All right. In that case, what are you looking forward to in the next 3 months?
Yeah. The next 3 months are going to be, well, like every 3-month block, very busy. But I've got a couple of things. I have a few PhD students who are coming to the end of their projects. Just in the last few months, seeing how their thesis and all of the different work they've done and the knowledge is starting to shape towards a really, really nice story around some new areas of nanostructured surfaces through to new materials for optical and electrochemical applications, so batteries and optical fibers. So really seeing them get to the point of submitting their thesis and finishing, I'm really looking forward to that. That's exciting. It's been a long journey for, in particular, 2 of my students. So they've dealt with a lot during their PhD. So to be at this point is credit to them, and I look forward to celebrating with them when they finish. So that should be in the next 3 months. One of the other things in parallel, where one of the industry projects that I've been working on in agricultural sensing, we've discovered some pretty neat new properties of materials that we're now integrating into real-time sensing for farmers. And fingers crossed, in the next 3 months, we're going to go out to field trials. So we're going to get well out of the lab and go out to the farm and start putting things in the ground and doing live testing, which is going to be really, really cool. So I look forward to that one as well. Yeah.
I look forward to hearing what the sensor is about. That sounds very
Yes.
exciting.
Yes. And the final one is now that we're in September, sometime in the next 3 months, I'm going to have a break and have some time off, which will be great. It'll be very good. As much as I talk about and mentor quite a few people around having sort of the work-life balance and those kind of things, I don't look after myself as much as I probably should. So I'm looking forward to the opportunity to recharge my batteries and yeah, get ready for what will be another busy year next year.
The year 2020,
Oh,
big
scary.
year. A lot of things are being tied around 2020,
Yes.
it seems, for some reason. Well, it is very symmetric year, like 2020. That sounds
Yes.
super exciting. That is amazing. It's also a nice balance, and it speaks for what you stand for, basically. That it's a good balance of research from PhD students getting their PhDs to going into the field, actually. I mean, that must be so exciting for you.
Yes, it's exciting, and the challenge I see is just how to balance all this. So one thing I've learned in the academic easy if you had projects that worked and projects that didn't work, because you could very easily prioritize what to focus on. But as time goes on, you realize everything's good. There's a lot of really great things you could get involved with, and it's much harder to prioritize when everything's working. That becomes the challenge, because in the academic research, no one really tells you to put boundaries on what you're working on or to not take on something else. You're free to start to grow that. And then one day you sort of realize, oh, wow, I'm doing all this stuff, and which is more important? I don't know. They're all important. So you just try and figure out how to keep everything going. That's why I think the discussion around career stability, about mental well-being and all those kind of things, very important, because you soon find yourself being burnt out and worn out because you're just trying to do too much.
Yeah, and everything is exciting, and you want to run in all directions at the same time. Yeah, that is correct. Yeah, well, the field of research is very exciting, especially when everything is working, as you already mentioned. Like, and then it's like, which one do I focus on? There are too many amazing things. In that case, which do you think are the challenges faced by the materials and nano research at the moment? Not the researchers, but the science, the research challenges.
The main one I see at the moment, and I think the example of materials such as graphene really exemplify this. There are some great discoveries being made in the research space from a fundamental level, understanding some really unique properties of materials. But I see that the challenge is how do we engage industry and engage the end users in these new materials where it's not clear how to manufacture at scale. You can't just point to an existing product that already has this in use with a full-blown manufacturing process. And as material scientists, we all know about structure property relationships. So the manufacturing and fabrication implies that it's got some control over structure. So if you start to change the way we fabricate, does that change the structure and therefore change the properties? Maybe for the good, but maybe for the bad. So I'm living that at the moment with the general materials class of conducting polymers, so polymers that conduct electricity, that there really aren't a large number of existing commercial products that utilize these materials. There are sort of cousins of those materials used in organic LEDs and so on, but not the polymer version. So it's really finding it difficult now to overcome that barrier with getting it out of the lab, where it's risky, and an industry partner is sort of saying, well, no one else makes it. Why don't they make it? Oh, you want us to make it? Oh, that's going to cost a lot of money, isn't it? And what if it doesn't work and I'm the only person in the world with a full-blown manufacturing facility for something that doesn't work? So For me, I see that as one of the big challenges for the material science is how the materials themselves get out of the small scale in the lab and into, it might still be small scale, but how do we improve the number of units that are made, the reproducibility? Does the performance get better or worse when we start to scale up the manufacturing?
So the electron transfer works in the lab, but how to bring it to the production line, that's the challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know it's an exciting time because I know of quite a few people that are looking at that challenge. And I think that the nice thing is that most material scientists I speak to have an appreciation for this challenge and are design their research in order to try and overcome some of the challenges. So it's an exciting time, but I see it as one of the major challenges to the field.
Okay. All right. I hope the more and more materials and nanoscientists realize this challenge and start working towards solving it. Because I think it's very important to bring all the exciting discoveries in the real world in the hands of people where they can actually use it and benefit from it. Yeah. Drew, before we end, I would like to ask you, you mentioned that the diversity and inclusion is very important in research. Maybe you can give some pointers for researchers or group leaders or professors who want to have that, but they probably don't know how to do it, how to work on it. So maybe you can give some pointers on that.
Yeah. So that I'll caveat this by saying, in my opinion, based on my experience. So I do one of my other jobs or roles. I'm involved with the Early to Mid-Career Researcher Forum. So this is an entity in Australia under the Australian Academy of Science that basically advocates and supports all early to mid-career researchers in Australia. And much of what we look at is in and around inclusion and diversity. And so one of the bits of advice that we've been, I guess, putting out based on our research is that be aware of your biases. That's a big one. But also look at all your processes. So a simple thing being with the EMCR forum, we have an executive, a group of volunteers that basically coordinate a range of activities across Australia. So I was last year's chair, I'm the deputy chair this year. And one of the things that we did was just to go back and look at the nomination process for people to join our executive and to understand, is the language we use alienating certain people? Something as simple as asking people to provide referees, because there are certain people that will find it difficult to find a senior or 2 or 3 senior people that would be able to speak on their behalf. That doesn't make the person any lesser they're less capable of delivering what we need. So it's actually revisiting your processes. So a good thing to do, I would urge all group leaders, is if you're not involved with developing up the advertisements for recruitment, then you should somehow get involved and really put a lens on it. Are we writing it in a way that will only appeal to certain people? Because that's something that's in your control. And even if you review it and you say, hey, that's fantastic, I think this is written well, at least you're comfortable in knowing that you're putting it out there with the view to getting as diverse a range of people applying as possible. So that would be one of my main points, and it's something that I've learned quite a bit over the last sort of 2 or 3 years now, is forcing myself to be aware of my biases, but then also being very critical of the processes we use.
And trying to change them.
Yeah, not just waiting until you're on a selection panel and making sure you aren't biased in your selection, but even going back to the whole process from the beginning to make sure that by the time you get to selection, you've got the diversity of people there.
So being more proactive rather than waiting for the change to happen, be the change you want to see around you, basically.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely right.
Okay, I think that's very good advice. Thank you very much for that, Drew. And this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for the chat. And I wish you all the luck in your exciting 3 months and also for 2020.
Yes, thank you. I look forward to keeping everybody updated on how all this evolves.
Yeah, you can curate the account again next year and you can update us and tell us about the sensors, the agricultural sensors, and how well your PhD students did.
Yes.
Yeah? Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. To know more about us, please visit our website, realscientistsnano.org, and follow us on Twitter at realsci_nano.